Coming up today on David versus Goliath.
This is the greatest thing you've ever done. Do not forget this. You want to be a stand-up comic.
And as long as you had a Quiznos, you were fine.
Welcome to today's episode of David versus Goliath, a podcast dedicated to helping small businesses leverage technology to not only help them compete against their large competitors, but win. Your host is currently the CEO of Anthem Business Software, a three-time Inc. 500 recipient, and a serial entrepreneur with a passion to help small businesses everywhere find, serve, and keep more customers profitably. Please join me in welcoming your host, Adam DeGraide.
Hey everyone, it's Adam DeGraide with another fantastic episode of the David versus Goliath podcast. Today we have Tommy Yionoulis from Analytica. Say that 3 times fast, I dare you. It's going to be very interesting. Used to be a stand-up comedian, now runs his own business. We're going to learn a ton today. Today's episode is brought to you by AutomateMySocial.com, where if you're a business, you can automate 90% of your social media and never have to think about it again, and then only customize the 10% that you need. If you're a service-based business, like insurance, CPAs, lawyers, consultants, IT specialists, basically a business that doesn't offer specials or promotions and incentives, you can automate all of it and never have to think about it again, all for pennies on the dollar. Check it out at AutomateMySocial.com. I love social media and I hate social media, and this is a great way if you love it and hate it, just to get it done. Check it out today. Also, visit us online at davidvsgoliathpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to receive our newsletters, and you can also apply to be on the podcast. Well, with no further ado, let's get right into it today with Tommy Yionoulis from Analytica. Welcome to the David versus Goliath podcast.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just thinking, am I David or Goliath? But I'm pretty sure I'm David.
It's funny you say that. The guy interviewed last week said the exact same thing at that moment. Who am I, David or Goliath? I can't really, I don't really know. But it's great.
I'm definitely not Goliath.
Yeah, exactly right. We're the small guys taking on the big guys, and hopefully we're winning. And I appreciate your time today. So glad to have you. And for the watchers and the listeners, mostly watchers, by the way, this show is primarily watched over listened to. Let them know a little bit about what your business does currently, and then more importantly, how you got into it. I think it's a great way to start.
Sure. So the name of our company is Analytica. It stands for Operations Analytics. And what we do is we help our clients manage and measure their human team operations, right? So it's like easy to have a POS system, or maybe you have inventory, sales card, or, whatever. You're managing all these other systems for inventory or sales or whatever. We manage the black hole of the people that have to go in and do the thing that you do that then allows you to generate sales and revenue. And so it's all mostly around checklists and logs and procedures, and we schedule it out. You're working on a phone or a tablet, and all of a sudden you can have literally thousands of locations on the same operational cadence. You're now collecting data and analyzing it, and you're basically taking human activity and putting it into a database. Probably the best way. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was looking at it. One of the things I thought was fascinating is I was just watching a little bit of your video. You did some, back during the pandemic, you did a video on best practices, and you were talking about healthcare and questions to ask employees. And I got to the end of the video and I was looking at some of the software. So like even before an employee would check in to come to their work, they would answer these questions, and then that would give them the green light to come in. So I thought some of the things that you even did back then are really, really cool. And I noticed that, anything a business can do to be more effective and efficient around their people is great. And so you're trying to streamline, it looks like to me, the human resource piece of it, but not just from the HR piece of it, more from like the tasks piece of it, to make sure that people are doing and saying and performing the tasks that are required for their duty. And it's an easy way to know, especially if you have multiple locations, that this place is being managed this way, and these are the people that are involved in it, and here's the health status of our peoples in the process there, then this place might have a slightly different one. I thought it was pretty interesting how you guys, built that all together. How did you end up doing that?
I have like the traditional software founder story. I have a hotel, restaurant, and stand-up comedy background. I got an MBA to try to erase that 10 years of my career. And I'm like, I got to get a real job. So I'll get an MBA. And I ended up at Quiznos, because by the way, an MBA doesn't erase anything you did in the past. So don't if that was in my head, I'm like, well, if I get an MBA, no one will really care that I was waiting tables and doing stand up and managing restaurants for the last decade. They'll just go, oh, look, he's got an MBA. We should hire him for that. That did not happen, my friend. So what ended up happening is I ended up getting out of the MBA school with all this restaurant experience, because that's basically the only career I'd ever worked in. And I ended up at Quiznos. And at Quiznos, that is a great story because that's the largest franchise implosion ever. I had no clue. I just needed a job. It was right in the beginning of the financial crisis. And they had a job and I took it. I'm like, sweet, a restaurant job. And then I didn't realize I was like getting on the Titanic. It'd been like if I had gotten a job, like, hey, you're going to wash windows on the Titanic. I'm like, sweet, I got a job. I've been unemployed for months. And then all of a sudden, I get on the Titanic. This ain't great. Yeah. So, anyways, I was at Quiznos and they were like, hey, man, we need you to report on all these audits we're doing, because we were going out and checking the restaurants every month to see who was going to close, because we were starting to lose a lot of restaurants. And so their idea was you can just data enter this into an Excel. And I was like, you guys are high. You're crazy. There's no way that's happening. And I ended up building like a basically web form audit in like 2008 phone, basically. Think of it like that. So before like SurveyMonkey or any of these other free tools you can get, I built like a web form that you could go around and audit a restaurant with. And then we could download all the data into a database or an Excel, and I could like analyze it. And that's like how I got into tech, because I'd always been restaurants and entertainment. And then I got into tech. I left that company, went to another workflow company for a couple years. And then we ended up buying that company on an earn out. And then me and my business partner, like in 2014, we had built a version of what I built at Quiznos in that business as a training project. And then we had gotten it into some restaurants and we were like, people were using it. And I was like, hey, we should just do this. I don't want to keep, because we were consultants, I don't want to keep building one-off software that every project is just brutal and hellacious. I want to build one thing great. And what's crazy about this is that was like late 2014. SaaS wasn't a thing in 2014. I mean, it was. There were people doing it, but it wasn't. Most of the software that you bought, especially in the enterprise space, was all on-prem server in your own data center software. Like that was that world. It's hard to believe that was only 8 years ago. 8 years ago, you bought software and you installed it on your own servers in your own data center. But SaaS had started to happen.
I was way ahead of you. I built my SaaS system for car dealers. I sold it in 2007. It was SaaS. And,
oh, wow.
And then I built a SaaS system for insurance agents, and then I sold that in 2011. So I was way ahead with the cloud than a lot of other people were. But
yeah, you were.
What's fascinating when I listened to you, Tommy, you said something really, really great, and I don't want people to miss this. One of my jobs here as the host is to hear interesting things and dive in a little bit deeper on them. What I thought was fascinating is you mentioned the fact that you got a job on the Titanic, you didn't realize it. The guys who were at the top had no idea what they were doing. You were then given a task that you said, this doesn't make any sense. This is too difficult to do. I'm going to simplify the process. So A, you saw the problem. B, you created a solution. And then it started to work. And then you worked with consultants. And then you realized that the solution was too malleable. It was too many options that people were doing to it. It was bogging you down. It wasn't profitable. You said, time out, everyone out of the pool. We're going to figure out how to make this streamlined so it works for the vast majority of businesses that we're trying to target. And I tell people this all the time. One of the smartest people in the world told me, somebody will 100% pay you $100 million to solve a $1.5 billion problem. And that really is the nature of an entrepreneur, especially when it comes to technology, is what problem are you trying to solve for? How big of a number is that? And then somebody's going to give you a ton of money to solve that problem, right? Yeah. And what was really interesting to me over the year is how many people got bought out early. So I remember in the automotive space, it was primarily, managed by two companies. I think it still is to this day, ADP and Reynolds and Reynolds. And what they did, Tommy, is whenever a small company made great technology that would make their 15-year leases that they had with their server-side equipment that they were installing into dealerships, they would just go buy them for a stupid amount of money, and the owners never got to deliver it to the market, so the market never even knew it was available because the big guy was taking it out too early. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I thought for years in that industry, truly a David versus Goliath story. But in your case, solving human problems like with what you're trying to do, that is legitimately an efficiency creator. It's a time saver. It's going to be a relief for the businesses that once they get it set up for their process, because it becomes almost the way they train people at that point in time, I can imagine. Am I right in that? It becomes the primary training tool?
Well, so you still have training, but here's the problem with training, right? And we all know this. You can train people all day long. And that's what most businesses have done. They've relied heavier and heavier on training because they never had the control of the people at the location level, right? And so if you don't have the control of the people at the location level, then you have to go, okay, I have to now jump to what do I do have control over? Well, I can make everybody take a test and I can make everybody learn how this is supposed to work. But what you'll find is with most of these training programs is that people do the training and they don't change their behavior, right? No. And so then you get zero value for the training. You feel good.
Or they change their behavior for 2 weeks and then they're back to their old bad habits.
Yeah, of course, because you feel good that you did it. It's like, you got to watch your sales guys, right? Because sales guys will work on collateral and they'll do all kinds of things to make them seem busy, but they won't do the actual work they need to do, which is like cold call and get people on the funnel, right? And it's the same kind of thing with training and ops. They do things that feel good, but they're not willing to do that. Sometimes people aren't willing to do the hard work that you actually need to do to be great, right? And so I looked at our platform as kind of what we would call operations management. And so our job is to now automate and systematize the daily operations, which generally were done on paper checklists and in giant manuals, and they kind of just happen haphazardly at the locations. We're trying to put some order and some system around that so that it tells you, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is when you need to do it. And if you do these things, over time, you will catch more of your own mistakes before they affect customers, speed of service, or safety. And then guess what? You'll just have happier guest interactions. You'll do them quicker, and then you'll make more money over time. That's kind of what we're focusing on.
I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think it's too often it's an under thought about process in business is, I used to call it the blueprinting factor. So one of the things that I've always loved about McDonald's, I'm not a big McDonald's food fan, but they were like the original, let's call it assembly line for food. You look at Ford, for example, he created the actual assembly line. Yep. McDonald's created the ability to take fast food to a whole new level. And you know how they did that? They did that through with the tools that they had at that time to McDonaldize, no pun intended, all their processes and blueprint them. So when you became an employee of McDonald's and your job was, hey, Tommy, welcome to our Titanic. Your job today is to sweep the floor and clean the grills and clean the fryers in between shifts or whatever, right? They would hand you a manual and the manual was blueprinted out. So every McDonald's in the world knew, like, we have a way that we mop the floor and this is how we do it. We have a way in which we clean the grill and this is how we do it. We have a way in which we clean the fryer, and this is how we do it. And so by McDonaldizing it, streamlining it, and then building technology services and things around their business, they were able to automate it, make it more effective and more profitable. And to your point, a better experience for the guest because the guest came into a cleaner place with quicker food, got what they wanted faster, got what they needed and got out of there. And it was better for them because the guests got what they needed, got out of there and got faster. So they could turn that table quicker, and everything worked in a better way. And so we try to do that even in our business. We call it McDonaldization. But hang on, Tommy, we had to take a break from our corporate sponsor, Automate My Social. We'll be right back.
Do you own a business? Do you have or need a social media presence? If you are like most businesses, you spend either no time or too much time and money on your social media strategy, spending thousands of dollars per month only to get mediocre and inconsistent results. This leads to frustration and, in some cases, sleepless nights. Introducing AutomateMySocial.com. Automate 90% of your social media and never have to think about it again. That's right. Automate your business's social media posting and strategy like forever. Automate the essentials and customize only what's needed. Save time, save money, and get better results with AutomateMySocial.com. Our patent-pending technology gives you the ability to automatically create your social post and distribute them immediately, like in seconds, across all your social media platforms. Stop the madness of paying someone to create, post, and manage your strategy, and let our software do the work, so you don't have to. Oh, and if you're an agency or social media manager, you too can let our software do all the work, and you can get all the credit. It will be our little secret. With AutomateMySocial.com, you can have it all. It's easy to use, never complains, and never asks for time off or more benefits. See this amazing new software application at AutomateMySocial.com. If you own a business or manage client social media and want to save time, energy, money, all while increasing your return on investment, then let's get this party started at AutomateMySocial.com.
And we're back with Tommy Yionoulis. Now, Tommy, that is one of the hardest names in the world to say. I actually recorded the intro beforehand, and I can't remember now if I got it right. I think I did, because I watched one of your previous podcasts where you told people how to pronounce your name, so I'm hoping I got it right. But man, what a mouthful, no pun intended, considering we're talking about food. So when you think about what's going on right now at Ops Analytica, how big is your team right now currently that you're managing?
We're still pretty small. We're like between 6 and 10 people when you take into account contractors and stuff like that, which is great. Like, we really have focused on, because we came from a workflow background. And so we were like, hey, look, if we can automate this through smart coding, and we can reduce the amount of overhead that we have and people, then we want to do that everywhere we can, because, that's how you scale the business, right? Like, if you have to have somebody manually doing something, or you can just do it, you can code it in, you always want to code it in. So we're trying to keep it as lean as possible to make as much money as possible.
Well, I would imagine that's the case, right? Because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of your software is to streamline people.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can't streamline yourself, you're in trouble. I talked to a guy the other day. I forget who I was talking to on the podcast. We were talking about, Twitter, for example, 4,000 employees. And I said to him, what the heck do they need 4,000 employees for? Twitter? You put something in, it appears on the web, you store some photos, you do a video, you throw some hashtags in. I mean, maybe there's a few business relations. And one of the things that he said, because he comes from a big corporate environment, he's like, only 5% of the people there probably do most of the work. 95% of the people there are just there because it makes them look like a big company. And so in a lot of ways, that is definitely interesting as time has gone on. And as you're helping people, when you think about your own team, okay, when you came to develop the software yourself, when you took it from, I'm not just going to use a web form and do this, I'm going to build that team. Who did you look for to surround you to help you? What kind of characteristics and traits were you looking for primarily?
I think the biggest thing, if I was giving advice out to somebody who's going to found a software company, right? Like in general, whatever. And I would like to get your opinion on this too. I have my business partner from our previous company. We just work great together. We complement each other. What he's good at, I suck at, and vice versa. So we have a good balance kind of as co-founders of this company. And we're just both focused on, hey man, we just want to get this thing done. Now, granted, both of us also, we put the same amount of skin in the game. We're a bootstrap startup. We both work together. So we didn't have like one guy doing the money and another guy running the business and have any of those kind of conflicts. But when we first started, it was really about finding the right developer, right? And there are different levels of developer. They have your junior developer who you have to write down basically step by step what you need this guy to do and give them a complete blueprint, which takes time, energy, and money to do. And then that guy can execute it. Then you might have I'll call him an intermediate or an intermediate developer. And that's a guy who who can do more development, but you still got to write everything out and tell them exactly what they need to do and everything that has to happen. But they can do more than that junior because they're just more experienced. Yeah. Then you get what I would call like an architect / senior developer. And that's somebody you can go, we need to be able to put rules on these checklist questions. And then you just can stop there. And that person can actually architect, figure it out, and build it out from scratch. And just, I don't know, grace of God or whatever, we got that senior level guy and we gave him equity on day one. So because we were a tiny startup, so we had equity to spare, so we were like, hey, look, you're going to earn this much equity over time. And all you have to do is develop this code base and then, support it till we sell the company. And actually, we've all just kept working here. We haven't sold the company yet. So we're all working and making a salary now. But he was a sweat equity employee as well. But when I gave him ownership, he started thinking like an owner, not like a developer. Because developers, they have to make 1 million decisions a day. And when they work in most companies where they work, people are like, you got to get this done. You got to get it done fast. We're under a deadline. We're not, blah, 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 blah. And so they make decisions all the time that are good for them in the short term, but bad for the platform in the long term, right? So they'll go, the spec only says that it has to either be a yes or a no. Cool. We'll just hard code that in. And anybody who's in tech knows that it's 1 to 2 is harder than 2 to 1 million, right? Making something variable, making so it can handle multiple options. That is much harder to code in than just saying, is it yes or no? Is it a bool? 1 or 0, that stuff's easy. And this guy consistently, when he was building the platform, looked at the big stuff because he was an owner and he said, even though it would be quicker for me and in the short term, these guys would be happier with me if I just hard code this in and make this a set thing. I'm going to actually take the time to develop this right so we can scale this platform in the future. And that's made all the difference because in our little space of the world, we are the most technically advanced platform in a couple of really key areas. We have the best reporting right now, and we have the best checklist business logic engine. Now, we don't have every feature every one of our competitors has. They do some things better than us. They do some things easier than us. Totally get it. But when it comes to the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to do, which is to help collect human data and then analyze it in real time and then display that data, we win there. And it's solely because our developer, owned part of the company and owned that I was going to build something great. You know what I mean? And it was painful because there were years where I'm like, I need this feature. And he's like, it's coming, but he was doing it right. But man, as a founder.
In some cases, by the way, doing it right is just doing it too. No offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tommy, I've been doing this for a really long time. I've worked with teams of 25, 35, 50 programmers. I've worked with teams of 5 to 10. It's always more fun with 5 to 10. Always more fun with 5 to 10. But at some point in time, you might have to walk in and say, "Hey, buddy, I know we need this right, but I need this now. So you're going to do it wrong right now." and then we're going to do it right next week. So there's definitely those
you
moments.
always end up paying, man. There's a cost for all of that stuff. And that's what it took me so long to learn. And you know, right. and here's the thing. It wasn't like it took 3 or 4 years to really get to a point where we kind of had everything we needed to sell, like, and generate sales, right? But those 3 or 4 years were painful as hell. But then when I look back at them, it was also 2015 to 2019. And in that same period of time, and I think everything works out the way it's supposed to, that's when everybody in the spaces that we deal with, large multi-location businesses, they were all 100% focused on their new POS, getting an app, doing delivery, doing curbside, having a website you could order on, figuring out all of this sales related channel stuff, right? That was a big deal. So we would always hear from people in 2016, this is a great idea, but we're working on our POS right now. Come talk to us in 6 months. Or, hey, we're putting out a new app, or we're redoing our online ordering. And so, but then again, that all worked out too, because our platform wasn't that good in 2016, you know? So had this been in high demand in 2016,
wasn't ready for prime time. Now, what language are you programming it in, if you don't mind me asking?
C# and Java. We use some JavaScript and then mostly C#. We're a web app, but we need JavaScript because we need to run rules in real time, disconnected through the browser. So that's how we do it. We have our own rule.
Yeah, I am.
We built our own .NET style language for our rule builder. It's pretty sweet.
That is pretty sweet. Our software we build over at my companies right now, we're a Python Django house. So we do a lot in Python, a lot in Django. It's good. Yeah, it's a very flexible software as well too. Tommy, this has been amazing so far. I'm learning so much in regards to your industry. And this is Tommy, and you're with Adam, your host of David versus Goliath. We got to take another break from another great sponsor. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
At ISU RMAC Agency, we want to be your one responsible source for all of your insurance needs. From a rocket engineer in California to several hospitals in Illinois, our personal lines team specializes in hard-to-place risks and high-net-worth clientele. With 2 locations and 20-plus agents, we can write in all 50 states to better serve our clients with needs in multiple states. Family-owned and operated since 1962, and 4 generations carrying on the tradition of insurance. Celebrating our 60th year in the industry, we are truly proud of where we have come from and where we are going. With over 300 carriers nationwide, our agency can offer individuals and businesses more choices and better prices. ISU RMAC brings a wide variety of solutions to the table. For more information, visit us online at www.isu-rmac.com.
And we're back with Tommy for our final segment. Tommy, is it true that you in a past life were a stand-up comedian? Because I've always fancied myself as being a stand-up comedian, yet I've never done it. How many years did you do that for?
10. I did my first show August 12th, 1995. I had about 6 minutes of very dirty material. I did it in Baltimore at a club called Winchester's on Light Street. And I remember I made everybody laugh. It was maybe 10 people in the crowd. It's in a basement. About 6 of them were my friends. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the greatest thing you've ever done. Do not forget this. You want to be a stand-up comic. And literally in that night, I became a stand-up comedian. I was a professional stand-up comedian, even though I had done literally 5 minutes on stage. But I was like, that's all I want to do. It is the problem with doing it when you're older and more established is that it becomes so addictive at the beginning that like you literally would like throw everybody you know and everything you do like out the window just to get better at stand-up, right? So I luckily got into it very young. And so I didn't have anything else going on, but it is like truly addictive. And then, you know, within within 6 months, I'm out 4 to 5 nights a week doing open mics. And when I started, it was in the mid 90s. the comedy's kind of gone through a weird thing. Like it was only in New York and LA in the 60s and early 70s. And then it started to pop up in some clubs around the country, the big clubs, the Zanies, the Comedy Works, early 80s. Then you have the explosion. Everybody's making money doing stand-up. Every bar's got stand-up. Jerry Seinfeld's making millions a year before he does Seinfeld, being a stand-up comedian. And then it just got so overplayed and it was on TV all the time and everything. In the 90s, it kind of cratered a little and went down. And then in the early 2000s with Chappelle and Chappelle's Show, it kind of rose again, but more, it was just different. Like when I started, it was all about going on the road. So I would travel all over. I've done comedy in every state west of the Mississippi, except for Utah and Texas and like, you know, a lot of the Northeast. You know what I mean? And like, I would just drive around. I would like go to Tucson for $200, from Denver to Tucson for $200, sleep on a couch, do 7 shows. But that's how you got stage time. You know what I mean? I would do 15 minutes a night, open the shows. So it was nuts.
As long as you had a Quiznos, you were fine.
Man, I was just saying this earlier today. Like, had I done stand-up today with today's technology, my life would have been 10,000 times better. I'd be driving Uber all day. Every town I went to, I'd be staying in a hotel versus some dirty, roach-infested, gross condo. You know what I mean? Like, I could have worked all day, working on my act, just drove around a little. Because like, if you go to drive from Tucson, Denver to Tucson's a 14-hour drive.
Oh,
and then... Yeah, with like gas, and then you got to buy groceries. You're making $200, you know, that's a hard life.
You're not making anything, man. You're making $5. I mean, but you know, it doesn't matter. To your point, you know, you do what you love. And if it's something that gets you energized and gets you fired up, you got to do it. Now, Tommy, I do have a question for you in regards to Ops Analytica. So you are a smaller company and you are out there in the market right now. And you've got a lot of customers. Yeah. What is your current marketing strategy? And how do you go to market currently? And then what are your plans for the future in doing that as well?
So we primarily do content marketing, right, to establish our leadership position as a thought provider. So that's our number one thing that we've done. We've got 200 plus like original blogs that me and my business partner have written. I do most of the content writing. Just like we've really tried to become thought leaders around checklists and workflow and process and human, just how do you manage these teams? So we try to be a thought leader. That's our number one marketing. And then we're doing direct sales. We just have sales guys on the phones, hammering, calling, because, email marketing, it was great. It was hot for a while, but like now, I mean, and we do that too, but the return on the email marketing has not been where we've got it. We get it from just hounding the phones. And we've tried every other kind of cold calling. We've got a good system working right now. And then, we've established ourselves in the restaurant industry specifically. So like if they're going to be doing an RFP or they're looking, we generally will get a call on some of that stuff. If there's like a process they're going through. What's been interesting is, how do we take this? Because it's vertical agnostic, right? We just chose restaurants because we spoke restaurants. We had experience in restaurants.
You knew the language. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we spoke it. And now we're going in. So now we've just hired a medical sales guy. We're about to bring in an automotive and franchising sales guy because we have some medical offices using us and we have some car repair places using us. So now it's like sort of our sort of strategy, I guess, is just to kind of get into a new market or vertical, get some use cases, work really closely with that first couple of clients to kind of get the value prop together and understand the language. And then we can just expand into that vertical full bore. But if you don't have a use case, then you can't really talk to people about anything,
Yeah, totally. I do have a question I want to ask you personally that I think is important. Sure. Like towards the end of the podcast, I like to dive into people a little bit more, get to know them. Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams, back when you were on the comedy stage, did you ever go to bed at nights and thinking, I'm going to be the CEO and a co-founder of a software company that's going to help people be more efficient at their jobs, at their business?
No, so when I got out of college, I was all in country clubs. That's what I wanted to do. Hotel, restaurant. I wanted to be a chef or I wanted to be a restaurant manager. And so that's what I wanted to do. And then I did comedy like 2-3 months later. And then I was like, holy crap, that's all I wanted to do was comedy. And then, I did pretty good for a while there. Like I was cruising. I never got famous, but like I could tour most of the year. I was opening and featuring in clubs. I could headline what they call one-nighters or bar gigs. You know what I mean? And I opened for tons of famous people like Larry the Cable Guy and Dave Chappelle and Attell. Anybody that was famous in the late 90s, early 2000s came through Denver. I got to open for them and hang out with them. So like I was doing okay, but I was just like, I just started to get like, as you get older, your needs change, right? And I just was getting a little bit older and I wasn't famous or making a lot of money, but I was having fun. And then I thought, I'll get this MBA, but I never thought I'd be a founder of a tech company. Now, I should say my dad was a rocket scientist and my mom worked for Lockheed. So I wasn't like a stranger to tech. You know what I mean? Like it was around me all the time, but I wasn't a rocket scientist. I was a restaurant guy. Wait
a minute. Hold on. Time out. We got to stop right there for a second. Your dad was a rocket scientist, literally.
Yeah.
And your mom worked at Lockheed Martin. You must have been the pride. You must have been the jewel and the pride of the family. I could imagine. At dinner, they must have said to each other, "Sweetheart, can you believe how awesome our son has become? He does dirty jokes on stage for people that he drives from Denver to Tulsa, Oklahoma."
Oh man. And it gets better. So my uncle, my dad's brother, his daughter was the head of acting at Yale and her husband had won multiple Tony Awards so in the family, there was also to juxtapose my $200 going to Tucson gig was my cousin who had graduated from Yale and Yale Graduate School and then was like this massive director in the theater world and knew like crazy people. And her husband is a lighting designer in the theater world. And then my other cousin was a full-bore musician. And then he married a girl that was like in the Wall Street Journal because she's one of the best improvisers in the country. And they're all, and then there's me. Gonna go tell some dick jokes. Let's go. It was good times.
I got to tell you, I just wonder sometimes the pillow talk between mom and dad at night. But you know what? Look at me now, mom. Look at me now. And, Tommy, my dad was a disc jockey. My mom worked in business for years and was a jingle writer. And I have a lot of that family background. My uncles were very successful. In my young years, I wanted to be a rock and roll star. I still want to be a rock and roll star. I'm still making rock and roll music right now. But, I turned out all right. And Tommy, it looks to me like you turned out all right as well. Now, one final question for you, because we're running out of time here. My producers let me know. So when you think in regards to your life, the courage it takes to just get on a stage is a whole level of courage. But there's a different level of courage to take an idea that you came up with and a thought that you came up with at Quiznos on a web form and originally on an Excel spreadsheet and then turn that into a business today and then actually go people ask for money. What do you think is the tangible thing for you or the intangible for you and your business partner that gave you guys the strength to say, let's go for this? What do we have to lose?
Because we made a video, I think we made a video of the version of the Quiznos platform that we built at our last company, our consulting company. And we threw it online and within like a week, somebody wanted to buy it. That was literally the entire market research I did because I just in my mind knew this is what you're supposed to do. Like this is how you run restaurants. This is how you run a chain of restaurants. Now, I had no clue that this would have taken so long, like those first couple of years. Like, every entrepreneur like goes, oh yeah, like I thought I was giving myself like a good buffer when I said it'll take about a year for people to start buying this thing. You know what I mean? Like a good year. And then we'll be like, doing 60, 75,000 a year. And we'll all make a little bit of money and it'll be okay. And I've learned and I know that even if you know what you're doing, it's going to take twice as long as you think it is. And if you're doing something new, 3 to 4 times or 5x, right? The amount of time it's going to take. But, I don't know, man. It was crazy. I will say that I was I
guess the question I'm asking you is, was it a gut reaction for you or did you think about it for a long time or did you just go for it?
I just kind of went for it, I think. I was a completely spoiled only child in high school. Had bad grades, just screwed around, just didn't care. And then I was trying to get into the Army, which is a quick story. And so I wanted to go to the Army, and I was going to go to Valley Forge Military College and get in this early commissioning program where you become a second lieutenant in 2 years. And I actually had to work hard to get into that because my grades were that bad. I was under a 2.0. So I had to really crack the books and get over a 2.0 to get into that program. And then I got mono and I couldn't go to it. And it was mid-June, and I was like, what the hell? But I had nowhere else to go. And thank God I just went there and said, well, I'm going to go there because I've already signed up and we'll check it out, But that military school plebe system, for me, changed my life because it was the first time that I ever was challenged and had to overcome and really rely on myself and stuff. And I credit everything, stand-up, founding companies, just whatever it is, I just credit it back to if I hadn't gone through that plebe system and got my confidence. And for other people, that might be sports. That might be, everybody's got that thing that kind of grew them up and taught them they could succeed, hopefully. Or if you don't have that yet, you need to go find that activity that's going to prove to yourself that you can do it. Because once I came out of there, honestly, nothing has ever freaked me out. I'm just nah, don't care. Not going to be as bad as that. I can figure it out. And I guess I am blessed in that I can look at, I got to get to the top of Mount Everest, right? I don't look at it as overwhelming. I got to get to the top of Mount Everest. I just think, well, I really only have to get right over there. And then and then I just have to go right here now. I can break things down into steps. So
that's right. It reminds me, I talked about this a few weeks ago, Tommy. One of my favorite comedies of all time is What About Bob? And
I'm sailing. I'm sailing.
So I'm going to close with this for the watchers and listeners. In that movie, Bob takes baby steps. He finds himself baby stepping all the way to Lake Winnipesaukee. And you too can end up strapped to a boat if you just take one step at a time, like Bill Murray did as Bob Wiley in the movie What About Bob? Go check it out. Tommy, this has been so much fun being with you today from Ops Act. Hold on a second. I lost my mind.
Ops Analytica.
It's such a hard name to say. Anyway, Ops Analytica. I wish you nothing but the best, my friend. Have you had fun being on the David versus Goliath podcast?
Absolutely. It was great.
Guys, think about it. What did you learn today? You learned a lot. You learned that things have to happen and challenges can happen in your life. And Tommy was able to take his life from silly jokes on a stage to big money now in technology. You can do the same thing yourself. By the way, that's not to disparage anybody that's doing comedy or that's your life. If that's your life's calling, go for it. We need you. But at the end of the day, if there's something burning inside you and there's an idea that you haven't done yet and you haven't, mustered up the courage to do it, think about David. He went down to the stream, grabbed 5 smooth stones, went out there with nothing on and just went boom, pop Goliath in the head. Sometimes knowing that God has called you to do something is all you need. Thank you for joining us this week on the David versus Goliath podcast. I'm your host, Adam DeGraide, and I'll see you next week.